Train the muscles, not the joints. So here's the new hoodie, full of snow right now because it's snowing out. That's what happens when it snows out, it gets full of snow. Yeah. So this is the zip up lightweight hoodie. Sorry, this is gonna make a lot of sound because of the microphone. But this is the zip up one. I mean, there's a couple other ones, classic hoodies and stuff with no zip. I like this one the best. It is the lightweight one. Here's the back. And of course, wouldn't be a hoodie without a hood, right? So yeah, it comes in lots of different colors. You can check it out. I have the link down below. So welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding and Friday Q&A. And today I don't have that many questions, right? So people are probably busy with Christmas and all this kind of stuff. So I'm just gonna answer a few questions that I just got recently. So one of them is from Tim James, and he's asking how my last video applies to leg curls. I put up a video on leg extensions and saying that I don't do leg extensions that often because of how the knees sometimes get jammed when you just fire the quadriceps by themselves. I have found that leg curls I can get away with, but at the same time, a lot of the principles do apply, where if I go too heavy, I find there's grinding in the knees. It doesn't quite feel right. You know what I'm saying? So I usually stick to sets of 20 to 30 to 35 reps on leg curl. I never ever go heavy on them because I find that there is a risk of some sort of tear or some sort of pull in the tendons and everything behind the knee, as well as the hamstring, right? So ultimately, I just treat these exercises, especially isolation exercises, with respect. I try to do my best to make sure that I don't, pull anything or tear anything or whatever. So I sound like I'm brittle, but it's really not that. It's just that I find isolation exercises, because of the reasons I've talked about before, are more dangerous when you're going into heavy rep ranges. And I find that if you can follow the guidance of your body will tell you whether it's okay or not. And sometimes, when you do an exercise, you will feel like there's a grinding or the joints are kind of moving weird, or maybe there's a little bit of a pain, and you know that it's not okay to go heavier, all right? And I use that as my guide. I don't use as much theory, as much as I talk theory with you guys, and I talk about muscles and tendons and insertions and all this. Mostly what guides me is how I feel, right? I could take a shovel to the face, but I don't need to, look up research on why that hurts, in order to not do it. I just kind of follow that, right? So if I get a bad pain as opposed to a good pain, then I follow that. Some people say, well, how do you tell the difference between bad pain or not? Well, bad pain feels more like toothache or sharp, or like a stabbing needle or something, or maybe it's a grinding in the bones and in the joints itself instead of just a muscle burn, right? So at some point you start to be able to differentiate between the different types of pain, and then you respond accordingly, right? So Picker Dinner's asking me about leg presses, and are leg presses effective for building legs? I did a video on this, leg presses versus squats. Can you grow legs without squats, and the difference between leg press and squat, and why I prefer squat in most circumstances. But I understand also, depending on how you're built, depending on what's going on with your body or injuries, whatever, sometimes squats aren't an option for you. So at that point, you have no choice but to look at leg presses or one-legged movements. And I do honestly feel that one-legged movements and leg presses, you could build bigger legs than actually sticking to squats, because squats do have a lot of other muscles involved that hit failure in many cases way before the legs do. So don't feel like you have to be obligated to squat in order to build legs. That's definitely not the truth. So leg presses, I do like them, but I do notice that if you go too heavy, sometimes they will put a little bit of pressure on the knees, because once again, it's mostly a knee movement, and although the hamstrings do fire a little bit, they're not firing with the extension of the hips that much, because there's no extension of the hip during the exercise, right? There's just, you're staying in one locked position and the legs are just pumping. So there is an emphasis more on quadricep than the hamstring and the quadricep together. But ultimately, you got to feel your way through this, and it depends on how you're built. It's always the thing I fall back on, because I've seen some people that aren't supposed to be able to do certain things. They're supposed to be totally biomechanically wrong, and yet they do it and it works perfect for them. So yeah, go on how you feel. If you're feeling good, then I'd say go nuts with it. But I would encourage you to stick to one-legged movements as well. Like put in some step-ups, put in some one-legged squats or some lunges or walking lunges, Smith machine lunges. These types of movements along with leg press will build massive legs. So I'd really recommend you do that, right? Dima Medvedev. Wow, say that thing fast, eh? Say that name fast a lot of times. So anyway, he says he thinks that Sissy squat also creates a lot of tension on the knee joint. And I would say, yeah. I mean, it is absolutely devastating to the knee joint. That's why you don't see guys doing 500-pound sissy squats. You know, they don't put like 17,000 plates on their chest and do this because you will absolutely totally blow your knees out doing sissy squats like that. I never have done sissy squats. I've messed around with them, noticed that they hurt my knees, so I just stayed away from them. Again, go with what works for you, but it's not necessary. Sissy squats aren't necessary in order for you to get leg development, that's for sure. You know, I think my point is in this is that it's always about following the guidance of your body. And what I mean by this, you know, I always say that, what I mean by this, What I mean by this. But what I mean by this is that your body will be telling you all the time whether it's the right movement for you or not. It's just the big problem is most people don't know how to connect, they don't know how to feel, right? And your inability to feel what's going on in your body is actually the problem. It isn't about right or wrong as much as it is about can you feel what's going on, you know? So all my advice is really pointing towards that more than anything, because when you can feel what's going on, that will automatically guide you to the right movement and the right way of doing it for you, or not doing it at all, right? So that's really what I want you to work on. That's really what I'm encouraging on this channel, right? So after doing the high rep, sorry, I'm sweating out here, you know, sweating. So sweat and dandruff. So after making that video on high reps, which was a popular video because I know a lot of people want to do high reps. The reason why they want to do high reps is because a lot of guys out there are finding that low reps are breaking them. You know, they're getting a lot of injuries from it and stuff. So it's not about high reps being better than low reps. It's about what is the perfect rep range for you. So I was explaining to a guy yesterday and he was saying to me, well, don't I need to do this? Don't I need to stress the body this way in order for it to grow and stuff? And I said to him, I said, you need to stress the body enough, but not more than that, you know? So if I take a slap to the face, that's a much different form of stress or amount of stress than a baseball bat to the head, you know? The baseball bat to the head, I might not ever wake up again, you know what I'm saying? So that's too much stress. Whereas if I take the slap, I might even get a black eye, but I will recover from the black eye. So the whole point of stress through training is to give it enough stress that it can recover from it, right? The body can recover from it. And you want that stress to be pointed towards the muscles, not the ligaments and tendons, not the joints. So it's always about what rep range accomplishes this for you, okay? And some people, because of the torque curves and the forces and their joint ratios in their body, sometimes the force is extreme under certain ranges, more extreme than say with another person, and that extreme force is enough to sometimes snap things. You find out how much force is enough. So when I said high reps are good, yes, they are good, but are they the only way? No, they're not. I find that working with all rep ranges works the best, and combining it all and now creating this soup that is perfect for your body and for its injuries and for its injury sensitivity. I guess that's a better word for it, right? So just to be clear about that, all rep ranges are good. It's just a matter, are you using the rep ranges that are right for you? That's the question. You know, are you experiencing results or are you experiencing injuries? You know, are you barely able to roll out of bed in the morning? You know, are you constantly inflamed up? Are you know, always got a bursitis somewhere or something? You know, it's about moving in a way that works, right? So give it enough stress, but give the body too much stress, then you end up with chronic injury. So Clark Robertson is saying that he finds that training muscles with low reps for a period of 2 months and then shocking the body going to high reps for a few months is a really good way of training. And again, you know, all these different forms of shock treatment can work. They can all help the body adapt and grow because once again, it's the same principle. You gain some strength and then you gain endurance with that strength and then voila, muscle growth, right? That's as simple as that. How you accomplish that is up to you, right? Like sometimes I will basically be doing, you know, high reps, you know, in the morning, and then I'll go and do the same body part with lower reps later on that night or vice versa, right? So there's different ways of shocking the body. So yeah, you do want to force it to adapt through shocking it, but shocking it safely. Sometimes doing heavy weight for 2 months on end, for some people that would be too much heavy weight. It would injure them. They would chronically get tweaks and pains and stuff like that. And so that wouldn't work for them. That technique would not be valid for them. So it's a matter of first priority, what doesn't injure you? Second priority, what shocks the body into growth, right? You know, so sometimes people say, no, whatever makes me grow. It's like, no, if you can't train, you will cease to grow. The growing will stop, you know, you'll have to stop training, right? So obviously, injury prevention has to be first priority. So Dima Medvedev, I'll never get that really fast. I'll never be able to say that fast. So Dima. Anyway, yeah, he's saying that he heard Tom Platz used to use 50 reps for legs. I think he actually was using sometimes 100 reps and 150 reps for legs too and stuff, right? Of course, he was in the unnatural bodybuilding, so again, different systems sometimes are in place there and different things apply. But yes, he used a lot of high reps for his leg training, a lot of high reps. So Hawk Ben is saying he's getting joint pain. He's feeling very energetic in the gym and everything, but he's getting joint pain everywhere. So joint pain and energy in the gym aren't necessarily related, okay? Because you could have good cardiovascular energy, you could be, hyper, you could have a good metabolism, you could be refreshed as far as your cardio goes and your breath and all this kind of stuff, and have lots of energy. You're wide awake when you wake up, you're flying around the day, but that doesn't mean that your joints are recovered, right? So if you're leaning on the joints a little bit too much, if your range of motion is a little bit too extreme, you might be tweaking your joints a bit. If you're just lifting too heavy too often, if you're lifting too heavy too often, this might be actually causing a little bit more stress on your joints than you need to put on there. And you just have to look at your training. And it's impossible for me to really answer your question properly, because you're asking like, how are you getting injured? Like, why is it you're getting injured? Why are your, your knees and your elbows and everything hurting, but at the same time you feel energetic, right? Well, I'd have to see how you're training and see what it is you're doing, because sometimes people say I'm training perfectly, and then I see them, they're bouncing off their ass on the bottom of a hack squat or something like that and say, oh, this just feels more comfortable. I'm like, yeah, that feels more comfortable because you're resting on the tendons, and as long as the tendons have elasticity left in them, it'll be comfortable until one day they don't have elasticity in them, right? So that boils down to the rule that I always say, the principle that I always say is keep the stress on the muscle belly, not on the joints. And you can feel it when the stress transfers to the joints and you're resting on the joints. You can feel it. So transfer the stress to the muscles, not the joints. And this will help you be able to, train more often and recover, because like I said, the joints don't recover that fast. The muscles are what recover, okay? So I'd have to actually see your training to see what you're doing wrong, if anything at all. But the other thing I'd recommend is that if you're getting joint pain everywhere and stuff, just take a few days off or a week off, and see what happens from there. And then start back slowly with a higher rep range and, say a moderate range of motion. Just be conservative in your range of motion and careful with your joints. Maybe you want to slow up the motions a bit, maybe not go so fast. See if slower movements will help take some of that stress off the tendons as well. And yeah, just work your way back on it and see if there's something that you can reverse engineer and find out, okay, what is it you're doing that's tweaking it? Because sometimes you're tweaking your muscles because you're doing exercises that are probably not good for you. There's maybe one or two. Like this used to happen to me. Like I tried doing front squats years and years ago, but that just didn't seem to work for me, although they were great for other people. But I would do them, and then for 3 or 4 days after doing front squats, my knees would hurt. So even when I went to go do leg press or went to go do lunges or normal squats, my knees all of a sudden were a mess. And I was like, what's going on here? And of course it took me a while to figure out, oh, it's the front squats. Once I stopped doing the front squats, all of a sudden, voila, my knees were perfect and no problems. So sometimes there are certain exercises you're doing or you're forcing yourself to do that might not be the right thing for your joints and stuff too. So that's the other thing, it's not always about range of motion. Sometimes there's just certain movements or ranges that are just not right. Like for me, like the pec deck on the machine right now, like for the, for the rear delts, when you turn around and you do it for pecs, pec flies, does not work well for my right shoulder. My right shoulder does not like it because it doesn't sit the same way as it used to. And because you're locked into place, it doesn't allow it to find that groove, and it just causes a grinding. It's just like sickening actually. So the thing is, you will find that there's certain movements that will, your body will respond to in this way, and you want to cut those out of your training altogether, right? Just because they're not right for you at this time. Maybe you can incorporate them later, maybe they can be right for you at some other point, but right now they're not, right? So Overcome number 72 is saying he can't train triceps because he feels a lot of stress in the elbows. Watch my Do You Have Elbow Pain video. And in there I explain a lot of the ways that people train triceps wrong. I mean, they basically force the elbows to be the main stress taker in the movements, okay? And in this video, I talked to you about subtle little adjustments you can make to transfer that stress onto the muscle belly and therefore take the stress off the joints. And that will alleviate a ton of elbow pain for you. And the other thing I'd recommend if you're having elbow pain all the time is to go to some massage therapy, get worked on, because it's amazing how many times I've seen guys with some rotator cuff knots, muscle knots behind the shoulder, okay, and in the upper back, and then that radiates pain down the tricep and sometimes causes the tricep to spasm and then cause elbow pain. So don't rule out the possibility that your upper back is tight and it's causing a whole bunch of compensations all the way down the tricep and causing you some elbow pain, okay? So it can get quite complex, so that's why it's good to sometimes get an overhaul, with massage therapy or see a naturopath or something, okay? So that concludes today's Q&A. And thanks a lot for watching. I hope this helps you a lot in your training. And if you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com and take care for now. There you go, train the muscles, not the joints. Guaranteed to make your back bigger, guaranteed.